Hey, happy Saturday. Welcome to the Sci-Fi Center Live, our Star Trek weekly edition, and our post Picard series finale stream. So it's kind of bittersweet, simple because I just the show had grown on to me after the first two seasons being kind of blah. Season three was epic. Season three probably had some of the best Star Trek I've seen in a very long time. It was a compelling 10 episodes. I wish we could have gotten 26 back in the old days, but I know how immensely these shows are. So we got what we got, and like I said, like we discussed on the other night on Brian, who I'll bring up here in a second, Master of None's post show. Yeah, we all had checklists that we probably, our wish list, and it didn't hit them all, but man, the ones that it did hit, like for me, and I'll talk about this with our guest coming on. I don't cry. I don't really cry as an adult in movie theaters or TV shows in general. It's just something I don't do. I don't, I'm not making fun of anybody who does, but I just, after ET, I haven't cried at a movie since then. I just steeled myself. But I don't know, there were no tears, but there was a chill, a sensation up my spine when they approached the Enterprise G. I know everybody else kind of went gaga over the Enterprise D because of its history, but I kind of got attached to what the Titan meant, and for the Titan to kind of like being renamed that. And it was cool because, like I said, and I reminded myself of every Star Trek introduction ship that I'd been there for. And this was probably one of the cooler ones for me. So let's get to our two sponsors. One of them is myself, and along with myself and Trauma Pictures, we are bringing you Tromania on May 12th and 13th, a weekend of all things trauma, including 3 Vegas premieres. 2 of them will be hashtag Shakespeare's Shitstorm, and the other one will be Eating Miss Campbell. We're going to try to get those directors on our overnight show because they are both independent directors, and we have a third guest that will have their movie on there as well. And the founder of Trauma Pictures, Lloyd Kaufman, will be here in Vegas with us, introducing these movies, signing autographs, signing merchandise, and just having a good old time in Vegas. And our other sponsor is appropriately Paramount Films, CBS Home Video. Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1 is on Blu-ray DVD right now. We've been giving these away, and I am going to be sending you your winners. You've already been notified for the most part. I'm waiting to send them all out at once because Paramount was supposed to send them out to you, but they didn't. They sent them to me. But you can get a brand new Blu-ray DVD. And like I said, here we go. Read my little tagline. Strange New Worlds is on Blu-ray, DVD, and limited edition Blu-ray Steelbook. Experience every episode like before with over 100 minutes of special features, including exclusive cast and crew interviews, a gag reel, deleted scenes, and more. On the Emmy-nominated first season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds from CBS and Paramount Home Entertainment today. Limited edition 4K UHD Steelbook available for pre-order now. That was a mouthful, and now I'm going to bring in my Star Trek wingman. And forgive him because he's wearing that atrocious hat again. So, but here you
the
go.
only hat I had to buy that was somewhat nice.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wherever you, I promise you, wherever you purchase that hat, it was sitting next to something better than.
I mean, if you want to send me like a Raiders hat or something from
how about a
down
Dodgers
there,
hat? Dodgers hat?
No.
You said Dodgers hat? I can send you a Dodgers hat. You'll wear it?
No, you wouldn't watch it get destroyed on air. I mean,
yeah, jeez. So as we await our guest, he is obviously this is going to be a busy night for him. He's probably on a couple of different streams. So like I said, he let me know he's going to be a little bit late, but I'm still buzzing over staying up midnight like a complete and thorough geek watching this show and watching it live and watching it. I just don't get wowed by anything. I'm not jaded, but you watch so much of Star Trek and you watch so much of science fiction, you're like, okay, that was cool, but didn't get me. But this last 10 episodes, it got me. I really had a lot of fun. The last 2 episodes, especially.
I mean, this season, it's changed a lot of my opinions on a lot of things. I never knew I could be so hooked on something. I never knew I wanted something so bad. I never knew until I came across this, and I was just like, from the jump, I was floored. Just for
the episodes
one.
got better. Yeah, each episode got
exactly.
increasingly better.
Each week it just kept getting better and better and better. And then last week, I mean, don't get me wrong, and like we talked after the show, and you brought it up a little bit earlier, and I feel like, yes, after episode 9, we started kind of having in the back of our head a little checklist, like, what are we, okay,
yeah.
right. So we could possibly get this, or we could possibly get that, and my Deep Space Nine loving ass is like, you know, it just sucked that the Changeling got the whole Changeling plot line kind of got sucked out in airlock.
Literally got sucked out of an airlock.
Literally sucked out an airlock. I'm just happy that we got to be here for the ride, man. Yes, I was partially being facetious when I was being, slightly hyperbolic about wanting more and more, but I'm just glad that we got to see what we saw.
I think. Listen. I think I said.
I'm sure we're gonna get something, man.
There's just no way.
You don't set up that sweet nectar, but then again, I watched the nightmare scene, and then I saw the opposite. So
did they, and I think they don't. No production company is going to put their fans through that again. And like I said, there's just so much there. I think that there's a better chance that you will see a continuation of this new crew than you would see Academy, because Academy has just been announced. You can scrap that if you want to. You can delay that.
How many times since the late 80s?
So
I mean, we're talking about writing off the original cast back then and doing a Starfleet Academy movie.
Yeah,
right around the time of Star Trek 5, possibly.
Yeah,
I think
so. And you have this show here. You have the reaction. Let me go ahead and hit the chat while we have a chance, because once Rob gets here, it's going to be kind of chaotic. We'll have to turn the chat over to Stella so she can have a great stream. Apparently, Robert Meyer and myself share a birthday and me. I'll be watching the replay after work. No, stop hashtagging Star Trek Legacy. No more Legacy. No. You know what I think they should name it? If they do a new show with this ship and this crew, you know what the best name for it will be? Star Trek. That's it. Just call it Star Trek.
Yeah, please.
It has everything that Star Trek has.
I mean, it's at this point now where you don't need to add what it is.
Just a date. 2023. I'll know which one you're talking about. Star Trek. All right. Return of the Jedi call to approve that Star Trek finale. Yeah, that was that was very blatantly the trench, but you know what? It worked. It worked.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The nerd part of my brain was fighting, tooth and nail, going, man, that ship does not navigate. It does not move like that. But all right, it looks cool.
Oh, we've never been. But it's.
I know. But we've also never been in that situation. I mean,
when she zoomed in above them, I'm like, is Luke hanging on to one of the antennas to be rescued? But But I thought that was great. RJ, long time no see. Congrats on having Robert Meyer Burnett. Yeah, hopefully I gotta get him in first. Should be a fun stream tonight. Good conversation. Make sure you guys hit the like. Yeah, hit the like and subscribe button for both wherever you're at. If you're in Point Nation, like and subscribe. If you're in Sci-Fi Center, hit like and subscribe. I think I will reach 1,000 subscribers. Right now, it looks like I'll be 78. Which means it'll be 2064, 27 something, 2054 when it looks like I'm going to hit 1,000 subscribers, but that's okay. We'll take our time. All right, Stream Elements, Black Ops now live, streaming talk shows. Picard Silver now spoiler talks with Robert. Oh, cool. Yeah, somebody's hooking us up. Thank you, whoever did that. That's neat. Aaron, how you doing, Aaron? Rob, hopefully Rob gets in here soon. But like I said, I was surprised he said yes, because the night after the show. I mean,
imagine,
he says he's got an hour.
Yeah.
I was expecting to get ghosted. I understand. Hello, Stella. 4th and 1,000. What's going on? Oh, RMB. Oh, here we go. All right, Clinton Huntley returned. Okay, yeah, I got that one. What do you think of the news of Section 31 movie? I think it's better as a movie because it's a good launching point. Let's see if they get it going. Let's see with the reaction, how people, because a lot of times these ideas sound great until you actually start spending money on them and start putting together a staff and everything else. And then you're like, maybe or maybe not,
I mean, okay, like with the Section 31 stuff, I understand. I respect it. It's a good get. I mean, especially post Academy Award. But I feel like Section 31, even if it is a little mini movie, whatever the hell, is a waste of her talent.
There's a lot of
I
actors
mean,
that
I would
do this,
honestly,
like, you know.
no, I get you, but okay, as a fan, I don't care for the Section 31 stuff. Okay, like especially setting
Even as
that
a
time.
DS9 guy?
If you're gonna give me Section 31, like I said the other night, I would prefer it be Alexander Siddig come back, Dr. Julian Bashir. Oh, Bashir. Julian Bashir. You know? Uh he's set up for that. He had the setup in that time period. He'd be perfect. The man pulling the strings, maybe for a more benevolent Section 31 and as opposed to more nefarious, I guess is the best way to put it.
I'm open-minded to it, but I think there should be priorities. I don't mind there being a Section 31, but I think when you have something like what we just had in front of us, you just take the momentum and we can get around to Section 31. I mean, we're going to revisit it again because it appears like it's kind of like the CIA. It's kind of like it's interwoven into most of Trek. So it makes sense that we'll see it again. I'm on board with it, but like I said, you got the Enterprise crew. Jerry Ryan's not going to stay immortal forever. I mean, I'm assuming she'll age someday, so let's go ahead and get 7 years out of her. Listen to this. Weedus Christ.
That's funny. That's funny.
Me and William used to smoke Kush back in 1913. Oh, we don't. I don't smoke Kush at all. So I mean, but it must have been somebody that looked like somebody. But I think I know who this is. I think it's obvious who this is, and it's hilarious. But okay. All right. Yep. Jimbo's in here. All right. Would you rather see a Star Trek 4 with J.J. Abrams or a Section 31 movie? Here's the thing I'll answer this real quick and I'll hand it off to you, Brian. I will go with Star Trek 4 just to end the Kelvin timeline. Just to end the Kelvin timeline, put it into it. I don't want to see any more after the Kelvin. The Kelvin timeline got us back into Trek, got the layman back into Trek or into Trek at all. And I think it served its purpose. And I want that to end. So I would take Star Trek.
It's over already. Just let it fade off into obscurity.
Well, technically, it still exists. I mean, I think and plus, like I said, I like I think the first one was great.
I mean, if you're gonna do here's the deal. Here we go. So we're bringing back Michelle Yeoh for Section 31. Michelle Yeoh's character passed away in the pilot or in the original first episode of Star Trek Discovery. Okay, all right, and so that this iteration of the character is already from a different universe. So now, if we were to do like a flashpoint for Star Trek in that general vicinity and time period, where some of that stuff with they might line up Kelvin timeline wise. So yeah, no, just anything to put an end to it. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I would rather see Star Trek 4 end it.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about it. So.
Yeah, I would like to see them finish the story, especially like I said when they started these Star Wars movie or when they started these Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams movies, Trek wasn't in the best of places. So if you told me back in 2009 that we would be sitting on what we're sitting on now, I would have laughed at you, because back in the mid 2000s, it was like, my goodness, will we ever get? And it was a legit question that I would ask other Trek heads: are we ever going to get Star Trek back on TV again? And it was a serious question that I had to contemplate, and none of us had a clear, positive answer in that particular time. And it wasn't until Abrams came through and broke through. And like I said, there's a lot of people that can have varying opinions about what the quality or where it went, but I don't think too many people can have any argument about the effectiveness of what it did. So just on that basis alone, and now that we are in this modern era of Star Trek, I would like to see that merged and ended, and that storyline done and used in a way to help what we're doing now, because it's part of Trek, it's part of Trek lore, and I want to consolidate Trek lore right now while we're on a high point, and before we can start doing a lot of these other things. But like I said, this particular series, there was a lot of I haven't even watched the Easter egg special yet, because I know there's usually just guys out there, but I guess there were so many. There's a lot of guys that are like, ooh. But as you can see, there are spoiler alerts on the bottom, and the title was spoiler talk. So if you have not watched Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 10, The Last Generation, the series finale right now, and you don't want us to spoil it for you, please leave now.
Watch it.
Because I'm about to. Seeing Q at the end. I didn't dislike his ending last year. I thought it was kind of cool. But there were so many questions, and now I truly understand what he is. Remember when Jack asked, "Hey, I thought you were dead." He's like, "Oh, you humans are so cute. You think of things so linear," and I'm like, he's basically like a Kang. He's always going to be there.
Oh yeah,
that version of Q is attached to our linear Jean-Luc Picard, but at some point in time, he's visited Jack. He's all places at all times. Because he's like Doctor Who. He's made stops throughout linear time that there's really no way to know when he's going to die. That Q died. But this Q, young Q, or, so it makes sense that, and I'm sorry, you don't bring in John Delancey to make that introduction like that. All I need right now is the name. What are you going to name this new show?
Yeah,
I've given you guys an idea. Star Trek. Just call it Star Trek. Star Trek 2025 or whenever you release it. All right. Thoughts on Jerry Ryan has been retweeting a lot of tweets of people advocating for Star Trek Legacy, even a petition. That's cute. I think she knows. I think she knows. Obviously, they can't say anything. I mean, I think that they're listen, I could be 100% wrong. Could be 100% wrong. I could look like a fool, which is I'm wearing a Shazam shirt sitting in the middle of a comic book store. So that's not really hard for me. But I think they've already got the wheels in motion. I think they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's. And at their panel at Comic-Con, because I guess Comic-Con is like where everything just has to be released instead of a Star Trek convention or YouTube. But there's Star Trek convention here in Vegas, which would be cool. I think I might be there. Or Comic-Con, they're going to make an announcement. And you know how I would do it? I would have Q in that throne from Encounter at Farpoint, and I would have, how the rock sound? I would have Q on his throne. Remember the first scene, in the last scene, where Q comes down in that chair and says, the judgment has begun, and then you see all the new cast come out. That would be cool. And like I said, I was watching some of the other shows, and everybody's like, well, some people didn't agree with the Titan being rechristened. No, we don't need that.
I'm just saying we need Elnor back.
Yeah, is he alive?
Can we get a slot from my man's Elnor?
Where was it? Did Elnor get off the Excelsior? We saw the Excelsior up in smoke. I think he was on the Excelsior. Oh, shit. I mean, obviously, if you don't want someone dead,
let's
that doesn't
pour one out for our man's, Elnor. Poor guy.
But there's no such thing. I watched Q pretty much go away and say he was dead. So, and here he is back. I mean, everybody can come back. It's like comic book. There's no such thing as dying for real. You can always, in time travel, obviously, Tasha Yar, I watched Tasha Yar get killed in the lamest way possible. And she probably came back and had more of an impact, with her kid and, during the whole show, Team Elnor. That's hilarious. That's right. I loved when he would start killing people and they would take it off camera. Please, brother, choose to live. And you just hear him cutting people up. But no, I enjoyed the episode. I want that ship. I already got a ship builder building that ship for me with the NCC 1701G on it. So I'll have that in here in my Star Trek section. Yeah, I'm going to hang it because I'm going to have them all. Eventually in my Star Trek section. And it's going to be from NX-01 all the way to the G. What was that last one, Stella? Can you bring that back up real quick? I like how they alluded to Jack changing the name. Did they? Did that? I missed that. Did they? I'd like him to be known as Picard, but I mean,
I don't think they did that.
Are you talking about the nepotism?
I wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry, I have to rewatch that bit.
Are you talking about the nepotism comment? Because she's an Admiral Crusher too. So
no, they're talking about like the name part of it, but I don't know if he. factually changed his name from Picard to, from Crusher to Picard. I don't think that happened.
That would be cool if they did a Picard on the Enterprise, and then you basically have a 95-year-old adopting his 25-year-old son or a 30-year-old son. But no, I really like him. I want to see more of him. He grew on me. He grew on me just like Shaw did. But now I understand why Shaw had to go. Even though you could have made an argument, either way. Because I like Shaw and I like his sense of humor. When he's like, "Hey, we have to go back. We have to go back to Starfleet or wherever we were about to go." It's like, "You mean go right back to where we are?" And he just said it like as a matter of fact, or that he was always needing him, or people know who his parents are. Yeah, and then the whole nepotism thing. But remember, he got into Starfleet and made it through in a year because guess what? All the old people are dead. They killed a lot of old senior officers.
They don't have any veterans.
Yeah. So everybody on that ship, I mean, 7 of 9 hasn't been a Starfleet officer that long, and she's a captain now. And you have Roppy with her history. She's the first officer now. You have Ensign Crusher. You have another Ensign Crusher. If he keeps his name, it's another Ensign Crusher on the bridge, or whatever his new role is. So yeah, I really enjoyed all the nods. Yeah, I mean, I would have done it differently. I would have given 2 hours. I would have given 2 hours. I would have put Guinan in there because I really wanted to see Guinan. I really enjoyed Guinan's character her entire time. I did not enjoy season 2 Guinan, that whole replacement young Guinan thing. That just didn't resonate with me. Like I guess it resonated with other people. I wanted to see Whoopi, and when he came on The View and invited her back and she accepted, I thought for sure we were going to see her.
That was last year.
Was she on the show last year?
Yeah.
I know Guinan was, but was Whoopi?
Absolutely.
Dude, I'm getting old.
I'll say.
Because
she was on the first episode and the last episode, to my recollection.
That's right. She's in the bar. Was she in the bar?
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to watch. I was
going
to try
not to Picard on his little mission.
That's right. I was going to try not to rewatch season 2 again because I liked certain parts of season 2, but for the most part, I really didn't like season 2. Season 1 was all right.
Me remember, man. That's not cool.
What?
I tried to block out that season.
Yeah, I really do. Maybe that's why I
remember all the kids in cages bits, and I'm just like, no, I'm good.
Oh yeah, with the whole that was.
Oh God, no! Please,
that is where the criticism, and like I said, when Rob makes it in, that is one of the criticisms I do agree with him on.
They got real heavy-handed about that shit, and it was unnecessary.
And I understand it was time travel. It's time travel.
But I don't need to see my time reflected through my lens, through that kind of
a show that's supposed to be. I don't like time travel for that reason. I want to go to the far future and hope that we figured out all this dumb stuff that we do now.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
Granted, we had to go through World War III
behind it, but still, it's like, it gets a little.
Well, that one was too on the nose, and I think, and I do agree with him when some people that say Star Trek is too on the nose sometimes, because you watch Star Trek to get away from being on the nose. I can watch the news for the immigration crisis that basically that episode was going to get. I completely understand that.
Yeah. That's.
I'm all about inclusion, but like I said, at the same time, that one was too, even Star Trek old TOS, we were talking about the Cold War, but they did it in the abstract. They were never really talking about the Cold War directly. It was an abstract, and it was in a future tense after World War III, after, and remember, in order to get to this utopian society that Star Trek comes from, we got to go through a lot of horrible things. We got to go through
the nasty before we can get
the eugenics wars, the World War III that a lot of us don't make it through. Khan ruling a quarter of the world, that couldn't have been fun. The Romulan War. So yeah, all right. Aaron Raffi is 7's number 1. I think it's I think it's hot. They're going to do what Voyager didn't do with Janeway and Chakotay. Yeah, I mean Janeway and Chakotay, and that was professional that they never did it because it was your first officer. But yeah, the whole Rafi, and I think they have a good character dynamic. I didn't like the season 2 character dynamic between them two. The whole Laverne, Thelma, and Louise thing. That just really was like, come on. And then they're arguing and they're driving and they're wrecking through the streets of LA, and I'm like, what is this? Are they going to go off the cliff holding hands? I didn't like that one. So, all right. So, unfortunately, I heard a pop, and it wasn't Robert Meyer Burnett yet, but someone far less attractive. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, what's up, Dave?
It's been a long week. Sorry, guys, I was late. I just got back from the hospital, so.
Oh, whoa, everything all right?
My oldest daughter's been in the hospital for a week having heart issues, and yeah, it's been a long day.
Oh, that sucks, man. I mean,
Crazy,
what's her current condition?
Well, they put a stent in her heart last week, but she had okay, so from the start, she was a child onset diabetic, adolescent onset diabetic, because she had pancreatitis when she was young, lost her pancreas, all of that. And so she's been kind of ill her whole life, and she's having heart problems because of the diabetes now. She's 32. And she had a stent put in her heart last week. Then she had a bit of a bad situation happen in front of her and her fiance, and it caused her to go into some major blood pressure issues, and her blood pressure has been wildly out of whack for a week, so they've had her in a chemical coma, trying to calm her down. And she might end up having another surgery on Monday if things don't come down over the weekend, so.
Oh, man, that's deep. Sorry to hear about all that.
I'm dealing as well as I can be. It's just been a long week. I've been exhausted. I haven't gotten much sleep, so. But I'm here.
Oh, maybe hopefully we can distract you from this long week. We're just going over.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, we're waiting for Rob. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he's on a Star Trek tour. And if you watched him anywhere, once he gets going, he gets going. But he let me know he's going to be late, and then he will be here. And like I said, once he gets here, I'm just going to pretty much hand it over.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Same here. We're going to hand it over to him. And like I said, he has a way of taking over things. I doubt I will be needed. I think I'm going to go get my food while Robert Meyer Burnett is on here. But like I said, I watch this show every night. This show is great. I watched him on Campia for a long time. But when you watch him on his own show, he's unfiltered, and he can just basically do, he can go where he wants to go.
Well, I know he's a bit against New Trek, but whatever.
Yeah, we're not gonna hold that against him. We're not gonna hold that against him.
I'll let him know
not at all. He's in friendly territory. I guess a lot. It's split down the middle, but here's the thing, though. We got the old Trek guys who like old Trek, and we got new Trek guys, and we got me who likes them both. The difference between now, 2023, and 2005. This schism would have stopped Trek. Now it won't. Now it's just something we acknowledge. We acknowledge that certain people don't like, don't like this, don't like that. But we all, I think we're all in agreement that more Trek is better. I mean, keeping Trek going is to me the top priority. I know I'm going to get some stuff that I don't necessarily 100% agree with, but I will take anything but being in that mid-2000s, early 2010s era where I was telling Brian before you came on, the legitimate question was, are we ever going to get Star Trek back on any type of TV? And this is before streaming, because remember, streaming didn't start picking up until later on in the previous decade. So I was legitimately wondering, are we going to get Star Trek on TV again? And so I was more than happy with the announcement of Discovery. Discovery season 1 was rough. It wasn't very good, in my opinion. It had its spots. It had enough to keep me going and say that there's potential here. Season 2 is probably one of the best Star Trek seasons I've ever watched. And Anson Mount coming in as Pike. Oh.
Well, I have not actually seen the whole seasons of Discovery yet. I have on my streaming service on Amazon, we have a live channel that has all Star Trek all day, and it runs all the shows. So I've caught like bits and pieces of Discovery. From what I'm seeing, it's okay. You know me, I haven't always been about New Trek myself, so it looks okay. But I can say this, I did not enjoy the second season of Picard when I watched it last year. except for the ending of it. But
Well, yeah, when Wesley comes in and saves the show, pretty much. So.
yeah, and like I heard you guys talking about Q a little bit ago. Yeah, exactly. The Q is like Kang. He's not got a set time period. He's a being that can be at any time, at any any moment. So him dying is not really a retcon. I heard some people saying this week that they retcon Q's death. It's not really a retcon. That could be a Q from a different point on the timeline. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
what I mean. That Q did die. That Q
Yeah.
did die, but just like Kang, like Immortus is Immortus. He's still Nathaniel Richards, but young Nathaniel Richards is still going through the galaxy and going through time, meeting people. So that Q was attached to Picard.
Well,
And
it's like
this
you
one-
said the other night. It's like you said the other night. When I asked you, do you think that Q has a oh, there he is. Do you think Q has a thing about, the Picard bloodline? And you said possibly, you know. But anyway, our guest is here, so.
All right, so here's where I go from being a YouTube nobody to a YouTube nobody and a quarter, because this is probably the highest end guest we've had. So without further ado, let me introduce I got to get all his titles right. The Dope Duke of Discord, the Viceroy of Verisimilitude, and the existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett. Did I get them all?
Oh man, that just makes me sound like a monumental douchebag. But to be fair, I didn't pick any of those. Those were all hung on me.
Oh, okay.
That's why. And there's like the in the artwork, people have sent me an artwork. So I feel like if someone sends me an artwork of me, I have to use it. That's the whole thing. Fan interaction.
Yeah.
First
By
of
the
all,
way,
Mr. Burnett.
I profusely apologize. I was late. My girlfriend's father, it was his 88th birthday tonight.
Wow.
Oh,
And so I was at the birthday dinner. So I apologize. I was able to escape. And then I had a little internet issue when I got home, and I had to fix a wire.
That happens.
The Robservatory is not. I need Mr. Scott. He would fix things better than I can.
At least you don't have
or Geordie LaForge. Either one.
Or Geordie, yes, or Geordie.
Okay, so I got to let you know outright. I've been in your chat for a while, and I'm always in there. I'm a lover of New Trek. I know. I think we're in the same wheelhouse. We're both Generation Xers, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I started watching it at 5. You mentioned it at night, so I'm not holding it against you. I still love you, but to me, it's a soft spot in my heart. I'm enjoying all the Trek that I have right now. The only show that
that's totally fair. I would never tell you shouldn't enjoy something.
But yeah,
never. I would never
ride.
do that.
Exactly.
It's a fun ride.
Yeah, I mean, look, because I might dislike something, you have to always be aware that Star Trek is going to be 57 years old this year.
Yeah.
And most of the people that I stream with, I mean, I wasn't even born when Star Trek went on the air. And what's really interesting is, when I first started watching Star Trek as a little kid, Star Wars didn't exist. And for the first 20 years of Star Trek's existence, from 1980 or 1966 to 21 years to 1987, the only Star Trek that existed were the 79 episodes of the original series and the 22 episodes of the animated series. And that was it. So, for my entire adolescence and teenage years, that was the only Star Trek there was. And to me, that's why I love the original series so much. I grew up with it. And what I think people don't, it's hard to explain to people. There are two things I was trying to explain to people. One, how the world before Star Wars was very different. When Star Wars came out across movie screens everywhere, there was nothing in the history of Hollywood that was remotely like it. So, I mean, I've told this story many times before, but I'll never forget. I saw it the Sunday after it had opened. So it hadn't even been open a week. And it was the first time I was in a movie theater called the UA 150 on 6th and Blanchard in downtown Seattle, which is blown up. It doesn't exist anymore. It was amazing. And when the movie started, when the crawl started to roll, is a period of Civil War, everyone in the theater was like, they were all reading the crawl. And they didn't even know they were reading it aloud. because no one had ever seen a big budget movie like this before. And then for me, who was, you know, a 10-year-old science fiction fanatic already because of Star Trek and the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits and all the movies I'd watched on Sci-Fi Theater when I was a kid, to see Star Wars was literally like watching your dreams come true. Dreams you didn't even know you'd had, because there was nothing in Hollywood history that looked anything remotely. I mean, the closest thing in terms of 2001 was an amazing thing, but 2001 was realistic, you know, and I had seen it, and it's slow moving. It was not pulp action adventure, swashbuckling fantasy in outer space. And so what Star Wars did was it solidified the idea of wanting to make movies for me, but it also was very different than Star Trek. And in my mind, they both sort of fed off one another. Like, there was no, in my mind, I would never think, well, what do you like better, Star Trek or Star Wars? And it wasn't like that, because they existed in two different spaces.
Yeah, you can like both, because they're not.
Yeah, I mean,
not in the same
because
universe.
they, aside from taking place in space, they bared very little resemblance to one another. They were, it'd be like I've always liked cops and lawyer shows, but you can watch a police story like Lethal Weapon, or you can watch a police story like Serpico. You know, two very different kinds of stories, but they're both about cops, but they're totally different. And so Star Trek and Star Wars, both of them in tandem. And then 2 years after Star Wars came out, Star Trek the Motion Picture came out. And what was so amazing about that was no one, I mean, there had been TV shows made from movies before, you know, MASH, The Paper Chase, things that I had seen, but nothing on the scale that Star Trek the Motion Picture was on. And to go from growing up loving Star Trek to see Star Trek the Motion Picture was like, and I was 12 years old when the motion picture came out, and I was like, it was mind-blowing. I to this day, it's my favorite Star Trek movie.
The score alone is mind-blowing. The score alone I listen to on a regular basis.
That's amazing. Ilia's theme.
Everything about it. I mean, that was the movie that was the overture. Ilia's theme was the overture in the theater. I was like, wow, this movie. I think it was one of the last movies that had an overture, but it was amazing. And growing up at that time, you know, and then less than 6 months later, The Empire Strikes Back followed Star Trek the Motion Picture. So
that was my first movie I saw in the theater. That was my first movie I saw in the theater.
Oh, it was.
That was also my first movie I saw in the theater.
It was insane. And the funny thing about Empire Strikes Back. I remember being worried about it as a kid because they had a different visual effects supervisor. Brian Johnson, who had worked on like Space 1999, was the visual effects supervisor. So I'm like, are the special effects not going to be as good? And I saw Empire Strikes Back 26 times in the same theater that I saw Star Wars in. That whole summer, every weekend we would just go see Empire Strikes Back. And the thing about Empire Strikes Back was it took everything that I loved about Star Wars as a 10-year-old, and now I was 3 years older. I just had my bar mitzvah literally the week before, and I was like a man now. But it was insane. And Empire Strikes Back kind of grew up with me the same way that Star Trek the Motion Picture grew up the original series. Suddenly the characters were older, they weren't happy, you know, they weren't in the place that they wanted to be at, and they had to come together to thwart V'ger from destroying the world, and then by the end they put the family together. Well, Empire Strikes Back blew up the characters from Star Wars and made them more serious and more. So as I was getting older, these two franchises that meant so much to me, the motion picture and then Empire Strikes Back grew those franchises up, made them more mature, made them more serious, and did it at a time when I was on the cusp of adulthood, you know, going into junior high and high school. And it's hard to equate that to now because so many people I talk to were already born when these movies existed. And it's hard to try and convey what it was like when you lived in a world where they didn't exist and then they came into being and literally changed the way you imagined the world to be.
Well,
Did you had a question?
Yeah, I'm about the same age as William. We were born in the 70s. So the first movie I ever saw in the theater, and I saw it in a drive-through theater, I saw Empire Strikes Back. I'm thinking about 7, 8 years old. And my question for you is, what you say you love the motion picture. I'm not real fond of it myself, but that's.
Have you watched the new 4K director's version?
I have not gotten a chance to yet.
You should watch it.
But what's your opinion of Wrath of Khan?
Oh, I loved Wrath of Khan, but here's the thing about
because that was the growing moment for me.
Yeah, see, here's the thing about even when first of all, this is going to seem strange to people too. I saw Wrath of Khan 4 times the day it opened, June 4th, 1982. And when I first saw it, I didn't like it. For a number of reasons. I did not like the Mighty Maroon uniforms. I didn't like the fact that everybody was wearing these, because basically what they are is they're naval peacoats.
Because they were militarized.
Yeah, it was very much Navy, like you would see them on the conning tower of a submarine before it dove, and it was fine. It just took some getting used to. And while that revenge plot was very un-Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it was not anything that had ever really been seen before in the original series. Now, you have to understand, I knew Star Trek backwards and forwards. I had read every shred of material published, whether it was the James Blish novelizations, whether it was Alan Dean Foster's Star Trek log series of the animated series, the photo novels, every single reference book that had been published. So it was difficult to go from Star Trek the Motion Picture, which I loved, to Wrath of Khan, because Wrath of Khan, even Khan himself, like I always loved Space Seed, but Khan himself was much more larger than life than he was in Space Seed. And so it took me by the end of that day, by my 4th watch through in a day, I loved the movie. Mm-hmm. It took me, and just because it was so different, I had to come to grips with it. And I did not, of course, Spock died, and that was terrible. And Kirk cried, and it was but coming to grips with it, I mean, clearly it's still, I think, even the Star Trek the Motion Picture is my favorite Star Trek movie. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is the best Star Trek movie of all the 13 that have been made, because it's actually, what was really interesting about Star Trek is that Nicholas Meyer had never seen Star Trek before, and he came onto the project very late. He doesn't even get screenplay credit, even though he rewrote the script almost from scratch. So the version of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan we saw was Nicholas Meyer's script. And
right, wasn't that script rewritten like 3 or 4 different times?
Oh,
there were 5 or 6 different ideas behind that.
Yep. And he put it together. But what was interesting about Nicholas Meyer, very classically educated man, came from a family of artists and musicians, and he was very well read. He had written novels and plays, and he had made Time After Time, which is a great science fiction movie in its own right. So when he delved in, he started watching the original series. And what's interesting is when, if you really think about it, when Star Trek II came out in 1982, Star Trek itself was 13 years old?
Yeah.
The franchise was only 13 years. Now think about that. That would be like,
no, it's kind of hard to think about, actually, looking back.
Yeah, it's really hard to grasp.
I mean, that's like Star Trek, 2010 to 2023.
Yeah.
Not a lot of time. And you went from a TV show with TV actors, and then in the most expensive movie ever made at the time. And then they cut back and they make essentially a feature film with the TV division of Star Trek and Harv Bennett producing, or the TV division of Paramount. And they make this film, and we're only 13 years away from the end of the original series, which is pretty crazy compared to, say, now, because Star Wars debuted in 77 and it was over in 83. And then it kind of drifted out of the pop culture consciousness. And by the end of the 80s, Star Wars was old, and there was nothing really, nobody was doing it. It wasn't until the 90s when they decided to resurrect the property with the Thrawn trilogy and the Dark Empire comic series, with an eye toward making the special editions and then making the prequel trilogy. So it's pretty crazy.
you mentioned earlier watching a movie like 4 times in the same day. And I remember when they remastered the original trilogy for Star Wars in the '90s, they played it right before they started playing the prequels
Yeah.
in matinees usually, and I sat and watched all 3 Star Wars movies remastered in the same afternoon with intermissions between. So
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, yeah.
Rob, how did you watch this season 3 before everybody, and how did you keep that, giving that what we've seen and how we watched it on an emotional roller coaster on a week to week basis? How did you keep that button up without accidentally blurting out things to people?
Well, it's funny because like on the John Campy show, everyone made fun of me and said I spoiled everything. But so when I first saw Picard season 3, I saw it in 2 chunks. I saw the first 5 episodes and then the final 5 episodes over 2 weekends back to back. That's how I saw it originally. And it was like 8 months ago, like 10 months ago. And I enjoyed it so much that I wasn't going to say shit to anybody because I didn't want to like when I was watching it, like when I got to episode 5 and Ro Laren showed up and I was like, I was so blown away by that because, you know, I spent 3 years of my life making documentaries about the Next Generation for the Blu-rays in 2012, 13, and 14. So I know a lot about Next Generation. So it really meant a lot to me. That was the preemptive strike where Picard and Ro parted ways, was the penultimate episode of the series. When All Good Things was 1 episode, then in syndication they broke it into 2. But it was the penultimate episode of the series when it originally aired, and I really loved the Ro Laren character. And so when she came back and they had that, I thought it served a really interesting, on one hand, it served a really great dramatic purpose in that they both were trying to size each other up to make sure they weren't changelings. But also when they finally realized they weren't, there was this emotional catharsis that I, as a viewer, realized that I was waiting to see for 30 years, you know, and Picard was pissed. You know, he'd been carrying around this anger, like, you betrayed me. I was your mentor. You know, I took you under my wing when other people wouldn't, and you betrayed me. And I love the fact that one of the things I loved about Picard season 3, it's funny. I see that there's 2 tracks of people. There are the people that like Picard season 3, and then the people that don't. And the people that really like Picard season 3 are responding to the characters and emotions of it all. And the Ro Laren Picard scene is one of the reasons I love Picard season 3, is you're really delving into the idea of canonically, what a great scene. You know, you're dealing with the ramifications and actions of something that happened 30 years ago. If there's something that deeply wounds you emotionally, it doesn't really go away. I mean, the pain is numbed after a while, but if you were to confront, like, if somebody you were madly in love with abandoned you, and then you ran into them 20 years later, all of those feelings, it wouldn't matter that it had been 20 years. All those feelings would come back. Yeah, it would seem like yesterday. And that was something I thought Picard season 2 did really well. Picard season 3, pardon me, did really, really well, in that all the emotional character beats felt very real to me. And while you could say that, yeah, it was Star Trek's greatest hits, and there was a lot of questions you might have because of its breakneck pace. There's a lot of details they sort of glossed over. But for me, what was so great about the show was that it was emotionally truthful to the characters. And I really liked that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I thought was the best part about it. I mean, yeah, there's this great big techno thriller plot, but for me, it all kind of worked because, you know, the fact that the Borg Queen is essentially a woman that got wronged. Poor girl. You know,
I have no sympathy for her.
Ran out on twice.
I know. I mean, it's just
the bill.
And then her whole civilization or whatever was wiped out.
Thanks, Janeway.
So that was the Borg Queen that Janeway wiped out, right? That Janeway took.
Yeah.
That was Alice Creek. A quick question for you, Rob. So now I'm going to go through my gamut of emotions of growing up as a Star Trek fan and having seen each of these ships come through. So obviously, I wasn't born when I got used to the original one. I got that in repeats, and then when I first saw in the movies the Star Trek motion pictures, the refit, and that was cool.
Right.
And then at the end of Star Trek 4, we see the rebuilt Yorktown turn into that. each of these Star Trek shows, and then when I saw Next Generation and so on, Enterprise, each Star Trek ship I just saw and it was introduced, and I accepted the fact that that was Enterprise. The reason why this one, and maybe I'm just in my own headspace, the reason why seeing the Enterprise G drove me near tears, because I don't cry, drove me near to the point where that kind of emotion was because of what that ship had gone through. Through the 10 episodes, I was attached to that ship and its crew, and it was the first time I saw a ship earn the name Enterprise, ascend to the legend. And I thought that was something I had never seen in my time on the planet. What did you feel when you saw the G?
It's a really great it's a really great, I think that's a really great point, because here's the thing. Obviously, people have said, they've made the point, like the Enterprise is a flagship, and the Neo Constitution class is not a big ship like the Enterprise F was. I would assume the Enterprise F was destroyed with what happened, but I think you're right. I mean, when I say, it didn't bother me that it's a little bit of a stretch, I thought, but because of Star Trek 4, it didn't bother me that much, that they changed it. For me, it just all worked because it seemed correct. It honored the entire legacy of Star Trek. So, yeah.
I loved it. And now when we get to the ending, now I made a bet with these guys that, and I timestamped it. We can come back on the right after the show that we're gonna find out that the wheels are for something in the future are turning a lot faster and a lot more than we think, because of the way they built these things up. They invested a lot. They paid a lot of attention to detail. Q coming in at the end, basically being that Picard's Q for that attachment to him. The development of the ship, the characters, that's just not something you do to just leave it. I mean, what do you think as far as the future of the Enterprise G crew?
Well, here's I mean, obviously, we would love it. I would love it to see. I'm very impressed, despite what people say on Twitter and all that. I'm very impressed by Terry Matalas, and I'm very impressed by his writing staff. The people that I got to talk to, whether it was Sean Tretta or Matt Okamura or Christopher Monfett and Terry, they had all worked together previously. And what I really liked about Picard was it seemed of a piece. Like, it was conceived very quickly to be a certain thing. They wanted it to be a certain thing, and they executed on it. And I think that they succeeded in doing what they wanted to do. The problem is that Picard was a show that was in a cul-de-sac dead end, in that there was no future there. That show was designed to run 3 seasons, and Alex Kurtzman went off to make Man Who Fell to Earth. Akiva Goldsman went to do Strange New Worlds, and Michael Chabon left the Trek franchise. So they needed somebody to step in to do Picard. There was never a thought that anything that happened with Picard season 3 was going to go somewhere. It was just going to end what they were. Picard was a thing unto itself, and it was ending. So there was no potentiality for a new series in anyone's mind, in Bad Robots. I mean, in a Secret Hideout's mind. So there was no. It's not like Terry was. There was even an opportunity for him to do something, but the fact that they baked that in a potential new series, that was very intentional. I mean, Terry obviously left us in a place. I would love to see the further adventures of the Enterprise G with Seven of Nine and Raffi and Jack Crusher and I love the bridge crew. I love that
Deep
bridge
Space
crew.
Nine cameos.
I've gone through a lot with them. I just can't.
Yeah, and you really like, but yeah, and so like here's the thing. I'm a big Star Trek novel fan, and over the last 20 years, they had a post-Dominion War continuity that was really closely adhered to by a number of different writers. So, and there was, 50, 60 books that covered all of this over the last 20 years. And it was really tightly constructed and really, really interesting. I think that,
here, by the way.
Oh, there's if you've read like David Mack's Destiny trilogy, which is about the origins of the Borg and 7,000 Borg cubes decimated the Alpha Quadrant and all that. I mean, there's so much good stuff in those books that I would love to see. It shows that a post Dominion War continuity is very viable, jumping around, like whether you saw Ezri Dax as captain of the Aventine, or you go back to the rebuilt Deep Space Nine because it was blown up and they redesigned it. And there's all this great stuff. And Terry could do that because these actors, of course, would want to come back, and you can do a show. Unfortunately, the Alex Kurtzman secret hideout Star Trek vision is a different vision. Like, they're not working, despite what they're saying, they're not working in old Star Trek canon. They're creating their own new thing, and they don't even know how to define it. If they had just come out and said, we're rebooting Star Trek, this is in a different universe, like Battlestar Galactica is, it's just new Star Trek, I think a lot of people, they could have alleviated a lot of the fan pushback that they've been getting. But they keep trying to say, oh, this is canon. And one of the things I loved about watching the first 5 episodes, when they get to the Fleet Museum and you see a classic Constitution class, the New Jersey in the Fleet Museum, I was fist pumping, because basically that was them saying F you to all of Kurtzman's Star Trek. And I even said to Terry when I finally met him at the Hollywood Bowl, I'm like, that was the first question that came out of my mouth. I'm like, how did you get to put a classic Constitution class there instead of the redesigned Connie from Strange New Worlds and Discovery? And he's like, they didn't watch it. They didn't know.
Awesome.
No one said anything. Because they were all off. Alex Kurtzman was busy doing Man Who Fell to Earth, and Kiva Goldsman's making Strange New Worlds. So Terry was left to his own devices to do. They weren't watching. As long as Terry stayed on time and on budget, and if they needed help, I mean, Terry could call up Alex, who was busy doing his own miniseries, and they didn't know. And by the way, to be honest, Alex Kurtzman wouldn't know that anyway. If he was looking at the Fleet Museum and saw a Constitution class ship, I am willing to bet you dollars to donuts he wouldn't even go, wait a minute, that doesn't look exactly like our own Discovery, or our own Discovery era Constitution class ship.
Where's a Discovery class ship?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
and that got written out of history. So
I mean,
go ahead,
yeah,
Dave, real quick. You got a question?
So, Robert, I happen to like Strange New Worlds. What is your opinion of it?
I think Strange New Worlds is the Las Vegas version of Star Trek. If they put a Las Vegas show on that you could go watch, it would look like that.
Oh, you're talking about you're not talking Dantana, Las Vegas. You're talking about Las Vegas as in a show.
Yeah, I'm talking about like if you went to a show, like if
it's like
you
a
were going to the Wind and they put on a show, like here you can go, come see tonight's Star Trek show. Here's my whole thing about Strange New Worlds is the cast is fine, the production design, it looks good. I don't believe it. The way the characters do not talk to each other like they're in any kind of a proper military. And you look, the new trailer they dropped for season 2 is, to me, it's everything wrong with modern Star Trek, in the sense that Kirk getting caught in a revolving door, Spock going, what's your catchphrase? And Spock is turned into an idiot. If I was making Strange New Worlds, Spock would come up and he would have the most badass catchphrase ever. If someone said, so what is your catchphrase? And Spock would think about it, and he would come up in his very Spock way with like the coolest catchphrase ever, because that's what Spock would do. Spock would not, he would understand that, okay, if there's a Starfleet tradition of coming up with catchphrases, which, by the way, catchphrases belong to the next generation, engage. And that alone shows you that, to me, I don't like the fact that Strange New Worlds even has a catchphrase, or that Discovery has a catchphrase. Catchphrases are only a next generation thing. They're not canonical to any other Star Trek show. But that's a little thing. But to me, if Strange New Worlds was true to Star Trek, the character of Spock would not be turned into a buffoon by going, go very fast. He would think about it and he would realize, okay, if this is a Starfleet tradition and I'm sitting in the captain's chair for the first time, my catchphrase is going to be something memorable, honorable, and great. And Spock would think about it, and he would just lay out the coolest catchphrase ever. And he wouldn't smile about it. He would just say it. And the bridge crew would be in awe. But instead, they go the other way and they turn it into a joke. And that is my problem with Strange New Worlds. Because the thing about Star Trek was, it never, even in comedic episodes, it never made fun of its characters. And this is something that has been completely lost on the new generation of writers. Even when you go to overtly comic episodes like Trouble with Tribbles and A Piece of the Action, there's a great scene where Kirk can't drive a stick shift, an old 20s car. You know, it's going backwards and forward. It's going forwards and then backfiring. You know, and finally Kirk's like, he can't get it. And Spock turns to him and says something to the effect of, "You are an excellent starship commander, but as a taxi driver, you leave much to be desired." And the thing about that is it's funny, but it doesn't make Kirk out to be a buffoon, because there's no reason he would know how to drive a car, unless, of course, you know, you go back to the J.J. Abrams verse and he can drive a classic 300-year-old Corvette off a cliff. But that's just me.
While being chased by cops. While being chased by cops.
Yeah, and that's just me. And I feel that I understand that they want Strange New Worlds to have a Guardians of the Galaxy flavor. But if you look at some of the great things that we're getting now, as far as House of the Dragon, as far as The Expanse, we're getting a lot of really great, thoughtful, serious science fiction. And I feel that modern Star Trek, whether it's Discovery or Picard, the humor and all of that is very contemporary, and it's very strange. They want Strange New Worlds to be Guardians of the Galaxy, just like they wanted Star Trek 09 to be Star Wars. And the thing is, though, that said, there is stuff about Strange New Worlds that I like. You know, they're trying the episodic stuff. I just don't believe that. I don't see a believable future military. I mean, they don't even talk to each other on the bridge. They're way too overly familiar with each other, and that's what bothers me. I don't believe it. I want to believe it,
like using first names.
Yeah, all of that. And it's like when everyone's talking to each other on the bridge, I'm like, guys, you can't. No one is this familiar. If there's no military discipline, when they're in a crisis, that ship would get destroyed. You know, there's a reason why military discipline is military discipline. There's a reason why you have to go through Starfleet Academy. You know, you can't just be like hanging out on a ship and expect to get things done. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that very few people, like the people that worked on Star Trek originally, most of them had a military background because of World War II. Certainly Roddenberry did.
Including Gene Roddenberry.
Oh, Jeffries,
yeah.
and everybody.
He was a pilot. He'd been shot down twice.
Scotty
yeah,
was on
James
D-Day.
Doohan was missing fingers because of
D-Day.
Of D-Day.
I cannot fathom that. The coolest things about that character and that actor that plays him, none of them will be cooler than the fact that cat was on the shores in June of 1944. That'll always be the biggest thing for me with him. Wow. As an army guy, it's like, ooh.
I mean, I have to say that, like, and I understand why people love Strange New Worlds. It goes down easy. It's fun. But for me, when we have shows like The Expanse, and we have, like, I want to see a Star Trek show that's as great as House of the Dragon. I want to see elevated. I feel that Star Trek is no longer, it's no longer the elevated science fiction that I would want. I think Star Trek should be the Tiffany standard of sci-fi. And I feel, unfortunately, we're getting, and because the people that are writing it do not have a sci-fi background. They haven't read science fiction novels. They don't understand how great science fiction works. And their Strange New Worlds, it has too much, it's got too much sort of that pop culture sense memory of what Star Trek is, as opposed to, like, I look at a show like Battlestar Galactica. Now, that obviously is very apocalyptic in nature, but the storytelling was very adult, and it was very serious-minded. That's what I want from Star Trek. And the funny thing about it is, the people of today go back and look at the original 60s Star Trek, and they can't help but see it as pulpy, campy. Even the color palette of the show is not something people can buy into today. So they think that, oh, that's what people want. Fans want people to recreate the 60s, and that's not what people want. People want to see the ethos and you can update the tone and the look and the feel of things and not I think that Strange New Worlds is a show that's at war with itself. If that makes any sense.
By the way, I know you're a physical media guy, and I'm championing physical media. Yeah, it's Strange New World, but we teamed up with Paramount, and I have all the VHSs here for all the Star Treks here. Got a question for you because you were there, and I was there back in 1987 when or 86 actually, the year before, when the concept of Star Trek: The Next Generation was being bandied about. Now, I was in LA. I'm coming from a different part of the country, I guess, but when I was growing up, it was not a good thing. My dad was against it. Everybody I knew was not liking the concept of this new Star Trek. I mean, it may have been different where you live in, but I remember them.
Oh no,
protesting. They were protesting.
Yeah, I mean, people were not. They were not happy. And people were like, "What do you mean you're going to have a Star Trek without Kirk, Spock, and McCoy?" And nobody could really. I mean, I was kind of excited about it only because it was new Star Trek, and I was predisposed to liking anything that was Star Trek. But it just, I mean, it wasn't. It really wasn't what I wanted, you know.
I remember my dad was a huge Star Trek fan before, I was a syndication kid, so I only saw Star Trek after the fact. But my dad was a huge Star Trek fan. He had all the novels that were out up to that time. He watched the movies. We watched the movies together. So for me, when Next Generation came out, he was excited.
Yeah. Well, when it came out, I was excited too.
Yeah, even being an old Star Trek fan at that time, he was excited for it because it was, like you said, more Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I remember the night that show came out, like, we made a thing out of it. It was a thing around our house. Me and my siblings and my parents, we all sat around the TV and watched it. But I do remember there being different opinions about it, though.
Oh yeah, no, there was. I mean, it was syndicated. The thing about Star Trek: The Next Generation, it was syndicated, so it played at different times across the country. And in Seattle, it was going to debut, I want to say 4 days after it played in LA.
Yeah.
So I was in college. I was going to the Evergreen State College in Washington State. So I had my friend Taylor White tape it off television out here. He FedExed me the tape. And on my college campus, there were no fraternities, but there were these dorms. And A dorm was a 10-story building. And in the bottom of A dorm, they had these TV room. And the TVs, there were 4 TVs. So there was like a total of 12 TVs in the TV room. And they were in these pylons. So there was they were facing 4 different directions. So what I did was I went to Media Loan. There was a VCR already there, but I took coax cables and I put them into all 12 TVs. And I went and I announced it on campus. And I said, come see the Washington State premiere of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And all weekend long, that tape just got played and rewound and played and rewound and played and rewound. And I think there was only like 3,000 students at that college at the time. This was in 87. And I think virtually everybody at the school at one point or another came by and watched the pilot, watched Encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah. Now, I remember in Starlog magazine, they talked about, there were letters in Starlog that were like, oh no, this can't be done. We don't want it, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So,
people were, and it was rough. I mean, the first season of The Next Generation is really stilted. And there's a few great episodes.
First two seasons.
Yeah. Yeah, yes. The first 2 seasons, it's true. But there are some great episodes in there. And not a lot, but there are still great episodes in Next Gen. And
the battle, I think, is one of them, but that's my opinion.
I like the battle. The battles are, and that's you get Picard's backstory on the Stargazer. you know,
Yeah.
and all that, which was really cool. I mean, things like The Big Goodbye, which is the first great holodeck episode with Dixon Hill. I
Yeah.
loved Heart of Glory, the first Klingon episode in the first season when the 3 Klingons are found in the old derelict ship. And Vaughn Armstrong, who plays the Klingon, the head Klingon at that episode, was in the Star Trek Experience ride film and then went on to play the Admiral in Enterprise. And then so that's a good episode. Coming of Age, where Wesley takes the Starfleet Academy entrance exam, is a pretty good episode. I'm a big fan of the Binar episode 11001001, which has a great ending. Well, why didn't you just ask us for help? You could have said no. It's like, I guess I can't argue with that, because you could have.
Now, when I was growing up watching it in LA, it always seemed like it was on the verge of not being around. Like it was always in danger until Best of Both Worlds. After Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 and 2, for me, from my point of view, it seemed like the series was accepted at a whole different level. Did you ever get that feeling when you were watching it?
Well, yeah. I mean, the third season is quite exceptional. There's a lot of incredible, because in the third season of Star Trek, that's when Michael Piller came on board, and they changed how they went about the storytelling, because at first they tried to recreate the original series, and you know, they had all of these external threats and the crew would react. But when Michael Piller came on in the third season, his mandate was that, okay, all of our stories have to be derived first from our characters, instead of waiting for something to come out of space. Our characters are going to be where the stories are going to come out of. So it really literally flipped the script on the series. And so it felt much better, even though, you know, the second season was plagued because of the writer's strike. That's why it only has 22 episodes. And the final episode, you get Shades of Grey, the clip show. But we're
on the verge of another one of those, by the way. It feels like another.
Yeah,
one.
I know.
Oh, geez.
Which is crazy.
Now, well, from now, okay, complete Star Trek series, not including the ones that are currently in production, or everything in Strange New Worlds and Discovery that are still running. What is your favorite? And probably answer. What is your favorite overall Star Trek show as a whole?
You mean now the new ones?
No,
Or,
period. Like Next Generation,
the original series. Yeah, I mean,
all right. So for me, it's going to be Voyager.
Interesting.
And the reason why is with Voyager, I thought that Voyager had the best character development for the situation that they were in, and it was superior than anything else that they had done in Star Trek, because you had to see people come together and evolve, and you didn't have to see that necessarily.
You know what? 100%. You know, it's funny. To me, Voyager was kind of a copy of a copy of a copy. And I didn't pay much attention to it when it first ran. But then there were people like Brian Fuller who worked on it, and John Ottman, surprisingly, who edited a lot of Bryan Singer's X-Men movies and composed the music. He told me, he's like, you know, Voyager is a lot better than you think it is. And so I really made a concerted effort. I don't know, about 5-10 years ago. I don't remember. I sat down and watched it again. And there's a lot of great stuff in Voyager. It's just wildly inconsistent in terms of like, I would have liked the show better if they weren't trying to get home, if they just resolved themselves to their fate.
Hey, we're stuck out here. Let's
no,
Let's give up.
No,
not the Delta Quadrant.
not give up, but decide, okay, we're going to bring the Federation here.
Oh,
you know, we to try and get home 75 years or whatever. Like, what can we do? How can we bring what the Federation is forward to this place and time? And I was hoping for more of a world building kind of a show, but once they decided to get home, you know, it's like anything else. It's like Lost in Space. They kept moving forward, and the whole idea of the show is that they're cut off from their supply line. They can't get home. You know, this idea is like, it's going to take us 75 years to get home. You're all going to die. You know, and because they could have had the Federation working on something the whole time to bring them home. And because they had to go through Borg space, you had to retread all this stuff. I thought it was really interesting, but that's, you know, that's just, I can't say what I would have liked them to do, but there's a lot of really great stuff that's in Voyager. Like, there's one of my favorite Star Trek episodes of all time is Blink of an Eye. when the Voyager gets trapped in the orbit of a planet where time is passing much more quickly on the planet than it is on in
I
like
remember that issue. Episode.
that episode is a great science fiction concept that it's great. It's really well done. Or Living Witness, where the holographic doctor wakes up on a planet hundreds of years later, and they blame the Voyager for all this stuff, and they play
call
these
it the warship. Remember,
they call it a warship,
Voyager.
and they've got a totally. That takes a great science fiction conceit. It's a great episode. Or what is it? The dinosaur episode, Distant Memories or something. That there's a lot of really cool stuff in Voyager, and like Year of Hell Part 1 and 2 is a great two-parter, and but they had an over-reliance on time travel and the Borg and all that stuff, but there's still a lot of great stuff in Voyager, and I've come to appreciate it a lot more now. I didn't give it.
Go ahead, Dave.
Mr. Burnett, what is your opinion on the show Enterprise? Because that's one of my favorite shows.
I worked on the documentaries for that. The thing about Enterprise was it was the most messed around with by the network.
Yeah.
And there's, again, Enterprise has some really great stuff in it. Again, one of my favorite Star Trek episodes is a second season Enterprise episode called Cogenitor, which, the Enterprise is exploring the sun. They find an alien vessel also exploring the sun, and they meet the friendliest aliens in the world. Yep. And it turns out they have 3 genders. Yeah. And it turns out the third gender they need to procreate, but they don't they're like worse than second class citizens, and that's just their culture. And Trip gets all upset about it. Yeah. And they're like, no, you can't interfere with the culture. And Trip's like, I don't agree with the way they treat. And it's an episode that doesn't end well. And it's a it's why the Prime Directive was made for things like this. And look, I love the 4th season of Enterprise, and I think the 3rd season of Enterprise is really interesting. The whole Xindi arc.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Mirror Universe episodes.
Oh, that was great. It was great.
In a Mirror Darkly. Yeah. I love how they changed the opening credits for it and everything.
Oh, that was great. I mean, the 4th season did so much really stuff. It did it really well.
The episode you mentioned a minute ago, though, Cogenitor, that's the episode that made me love Trip as a character.
Yep.
That episode there, and then the episode where he realizes his sister was killed during the Xindi arc, when they cut a swath across the planet with the weapon. Those 2 episodes right there made me really like Trip, really realize who Trip was as a character, and he's one of my favorite characters actually in that show.
Oh, he's they were great. When we were doing the Blu-rays, we did all the documentaries for Enterprise as well, and so we sat down with all of them, and they were great. We did a round table where we brought them all back. Even Jolene came back, and it was really like the characters, really like the people that made the show, but the network constantly were giving them notes and made them change things around. The original conception for Enterprise was the first season was going to be entirely set on Earth, and it would have ended with the Enterprise, the NX-01 being launched, and the network, and they were going to deal with all the political intrigue and the Vulcans pushing back, and how we want to get out from under your thumb. And I think it would have been a really interesting show politically, but the network's like, nope, you have to put the Enterprise in space immediately.
I'd have been better than the Suliban, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, that was.
I got a question on that one. If UPN had been a stronger network and had been on firmer ground, because I always got the sense that from watching Enterprise that show we got was not what they planned. That was nothing like what they planned. That they had planned on explaining a lot of stuff. That their explanation for the soft-headed Klingons versus the ridge-headed Klingon was much more detailed than that. The time-traveling guy we saw in the future was probably going to be a Romulan to deter them from ever coming together with the Klingon alliance, and that's why they were doing experimentations on the Klingon. I just got the feeling that they were going in a completely different direction, and had that show been on a stronger network, we wouldn't have even gotten the Xindi or some of the things that they were going. Even if people enjoyed that I'll never know, but I just got the feeling because the network wasn't strong enough that we got something totally different than what they originally intended.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and that they were, Berman was left alone when he did TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager because he always delivered on time and on budget. At the end of the season of he never went over budget. He ran that show like clockwork, and so for at the time for Paramount, because it was always syndicated, they loved Berman's Star Trek because it was such a great, it was such a well-run show.
Yeah,
So
that's a damn shame, because I think that show. If I ever got my wish list, and somebody modern wise could fix that especially that season series finale.
Terrible.
I mean,
although Picard kind of made that moot. You know, Picard season 3 retconned that.
Well, yeah,
because you saw the NX-01 refit in the which I like.
And I love how Terry snuck that in there.
Yeah, totally.
Because that makes that refit canon.
Yeah, it makes the refit canon, and also These Are the Voyages is no longer canon.
Yeah.
And Terry, they did it on purpose because Terry worked on Enterprise.
Yeah.
He was Brandon's assistant,
That was that season. That's the only thing about that show that I did not like, really. I mean, aside from the fact that, like you said, they were hampered. Yeah. But I'm a guy that likes like early stories or prequel stories. I know that's not real popular with people, but it is.
I do too.
And I loved, because in the original series you mentioned the name Archer is mentioned a couple of times, Archer's Planet and stuff like that, and I like that they actually made that a person, that they came up with a person, and I liked Scott Bakula as captain. He was pretty cool.
Do you know what Berman told us? It's not in our documentaries. I guess I can say it now because it's been 10 years. One of the reasons he had such a problem with Les Moonves is Les Moonves did not like Scott Bakula as Captain Archer wanted Berman to fire him. And Berman basically told Les Moonves, fuck you.
He Howard Sterned him. He Howard Sterned him?
Yeah, I mean, and because of that, Berman, like when Star Trek was over, nothing Rick Berman was developing for the studio did they want to make. I mean, Paramount owed Rick Berman such a debt of gratitude for Rick Berman produced 25 seasons of Star Trek in 18 years and 4 feature films and made that studio hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And Les Moonves, just because he was a petty schmuck, and it came out that he was indeed a petty schmuck. I mean, they should have bent over backwards and given Rick an opportunity to make a few more series and a few more movies,
or at least give him the freedom to put the quality into the one that he was, currently working.
What I always wanted with the end of Enterprise was them to finally do that 5th season. The Earth Romulan War. I really wanted to see that.
Well, what's interesting is that after Enterprise was over, there were 2 guys that were running Paramount, Carey McCluggage and Donald DeLine, and they had hired Eric Jedrinson, who was the supervising producer of Band of Brothers, to write a Star Trek script that would continue after Enterprise. And Eric Jedrinson, like Nicholas Meyer, had never seen Star Trek, so he immersed himself in Star Trek, and he ended up writing a script that he called Star Trek: The Beginning. And it was set 8 years after the end of Enterprise, and it took place on it started out, the opening scene is graduation day from Starfleet Academy, and it opens on a boat race outside of San Francisco Harbor where these hover catamarans they're battling one another, and all of the graduating class of Starfleet Academy are on these catamarans, and it's an awesome way to open the movie. This beautiful boat race, and they come into San Francisco Bay, and they come right past Starfleet Command, and so you're being, or Starfleet Academy, and you're being introduced to all of our young characters, and so basically, and at the same time, they're going to start testing a Warp 7 spaceship, and the Romulans basically show up, and they demand the expulsion of all Vulcans from Earth. And the Romulans are going around to all these other planets and saying, get rid of your Vulcans. And if you don't get rid of your Vulcans, we're going to destroy your planet. So the whole thing is kind of about ethnic cleansing, and Earth is like, F you. No way. And that's how the outbreak of the Romulan War happens. And it was going to be a 3-movie story that was going to cover the Romulan War. And it was the script. It was only a first draft script, so it's not a perfect script, but it was really good. And then Donald DeLine and Carrie McCluggage were replaced at Paramount. And that was the end of that. And it never got made.
So many things in pop culture altogether just change course when somebody gets replaced. Real quick, your favorite Starfleet uniform?
You know, my favorite Starfleet uniform ever is probably Admiral Kirk's from the motion picture.
Oh, the one he wears for 7 minutes?
I love that uniform so much. I mean, it's cool, it's regal. It doesn't look like anything else in Star Trek the motion picture, but you know, I've come to like I do like the Mighty Maroons. I eventually came around on them, but
I love those uniforms.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, they're too heavy. I don't believe them inside a starship that you're wearing these wool peacoats.
Have you ever worn one? Have you ever worn one of those?
Yeah,
I have one here, and I'm in Vegas. Not a good idea.
No,
not a good idea.
I also like the uniforms from this season of Picard, the leather jacket look.
Oh man,
those are awesome.
They're awesome. I love those.
Are those going to be on there? Are they going to sell those? Because I'll buy those and sell those here.
Oh, I would love. Those jackets are dope. I hope somebody makes those because I would totally buy one of those jackets.
My favorite is First Contact. First Contact uniforms are my favorite.
Yeah, those uniforms are great. Yeah, you know what? Those are great uniforms. And I love the fact that they became, when they were introduced in the movie, then they spilled over to Deep Space Nine. I mean, Voyager never used them.
Rapture.
They were great.
Those are my favorites. The TNG movies.
First Contact, and then I remember the DS9. The DS9 episode was Rapture that they first appeared. And then you saw them in Voyager, but they didn't. It was the people like Dwight and Schultz and all those guys. Paris's father, they had them on, but obviously the crew didn't have them because they were been so far away. So
yeah, no, it was great, guys. I have to go because I have to go do my own stream, which I'm late for. But this is so much fun. We should do this again.
Thank you for giving me a piece of your Friday night, and I'll be watching that stream, that aforementioned stream that you just mentioned, because I'm going to watch your show tonight. But hey, thank you. I know this is a busy time for you. This is after the end of a series. Thank you for giving us a piece of your Friday night, and thank you for bringing up the coming to my hood and bringing up the level of the show, man.
Well, I'll be in Vegas all next week for CinemaCon.
Are you going to CinemaCon?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so John Campion and the crew and I are covering CinemaCon. So they're showing The Flash Tuesday night.
Yeah, I tried to get in. I tried to get in for that because we have some intermediates, and then they just have too many people. And then I saw the price that they wanted, and I'm like, I only want to see one movie. And it was the same thing for Top Gun Maverick. We had an opportunity to buy you can get a non-NATO ticket, but $1,300. I'll wait till June.
Yeah, I mean for us, it's because we're pressed, so we can cover it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for coming on, Mr. Burnett. I've always wanted to meet you.
Oh man, no! This has been so much fun.
And if we can have you on in the future, that'd be great.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back on.
Say hi to all 8 puppies for me. Is it 8? Is it 8 of them?
There's 8 of them.
I'm loving the videos, man. Those videos are therapeutic for me, and I haven't had a dog in 20 years. So there you go. All right, guys. Yeah. Where can they find you? Robert Meyer?
You can find me on my Burnett, the
Stella
Burnett
actually
work.
put the.
Oh, you put it in there? Okay, great.
Yeah, put it in there.
The Burnett work on YouTube. Then I'm on RM Burnett on Instagram and Burnett RM on Twitter. So find me there.
Robert Meyer Burnett, thank you. And hopefully, maybe I'll run into you in Vegas sometime. But until then, try to enjoy some new Trek for me. No, I'm just kidding.
I will.
All right, man. All right, thanks a lot, man.
I'll see you later.
All right, thank you. All right, guys. That was fun. It was fun for him. But like I said, that's the highest end guest I've had since I've had my own, show that I've hosted my own.
Coming up in the world, man.
Yeah, man. He came to Summit with us. We're important now. So,
and he says he'll come back. So that's good.
Yeah, hopefully it's after they announce Enterprise the Enterprise G, which I think should be named Star Trek. Just Star Trek 2025 Star Trek. No legacy. Stop it with the legacy stuff. No legacy. Just Star Trek. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Like I said, sorry I wasn't I didn't engage the chat too much, but we only have a guy like that on very rarely. So you guys got anything you want to add to that?
Nah, I'm gonna get running.
That would be cool.
I gotta
if you
get to
did,
bed.
Frank.
I gotta work tomorrow.
All right, man. I gotta go get something to eat. I was gonna eat at Sister Kim's, but I didn't. I want to leave.
Good night, Brian.
Robert Meyer. So,
Have a good night.
all right, guys. I will see you later, Brian, and Thad, I will see you on the overnighter tomorrow. Everybody, if we did not get to your comments and everything else, and if you want us to get to them, leave something in the leave a question or comment in the comment section, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Either William will answer it or I will.
Yeah, one of us will answer it. And like I said, who knows? Robert Meyer, Burnett might answer it. All right, we will see you tomorrow night. We got a very full show tomorrow night, Saturday Overnighter. I will not miss it. I missed last week, and that kind of hurt my soul. So I will see you guys tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Pacific time.